and welcome to RealClearFetish hosts RealClearPlay, an Instagram live / YouTube / podcast thing where we talk about all things fetish and all things sober. And yeah, today I am going to LA to talk to Miles, so I'll bring him in. Hello, Miles.
Hello.
Welcome to the live.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic. Normally what I would start at here at the beginning, we do 4 standard questions, and then we'll just see where the conversation goes.
Sounds fantastic. Fire away.
Fantastic. First question is, what do you prefer I call you? Names, pronouns, and title.
Name, Miles. Pronouns, he, him. Hey, you. Hey, sexy. Get over here.
And what about titles?
None.
None title.
Depends on when it's applicable with what I'm doing, where I am. Sir can be fine. Yeah.
It depends on the situation.
Correct.
Yeah, that people also ask me, so what is your title? It's like, well, if I'm cuddly, I'll be daddy. If I'm nasty, I'll be sir.
There you go. Agreed.
Yeah.
I'm in the same situation.
Next question. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Jesus. I was thinking about that earlier because I saw some of your other podcasts. I'll tailor it to this, I guess. I'm in my 50s, live here in Los Angeles. I was born and raised in upstate New York, but I moved to San Francisco when I was in my early teens. So I'm more of a San Franciscan than anything. So that's where I really grew up. And, you know, great segue. Woo, leather community there was fantastic. What else? I'm an artist. I've done fashion styling my whole life for the most part for luxury brands. Yeah, that kind of snowballed into this thing, which I'm currently exiting. I want to get out of that. So there's too much travel. What else? Sober since 1991, which is applicable to this conversation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm from a family of addicts and alcoholics. You know, my joke is shake the family tree and bottles fall out.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to have abbreviated answers so you can keep jumping in. Ask away. What's another question?
Next question. Well, you kind of already answered the question, and we kind of know a little bit about your backstory. But completely sober, clear-headed, or social drinker? But you've already answered
sober.
Yeah.
Completely sober by choice. 100%. Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And the last question: what is clear play to you, and why is it important?
What is clear play to me? Why is it important? I can only speak for myself and my experience, and this is crooked. And let's see. Clear play for me is I myself being clear-headed and completely sober. So I enter any play with that state of mind. And what was the last part of the question?
And why is it important?
Oh my God. Well, for me, specifically, that's how I show up. Let me find the answer. I may need a minute or a second or two to really find the answers for you. Because I pride myself on giving the truth if I can.
Take a breather to just have a quick little think. That's not a problem.
Yeah. It's important because I'm not alone. There's many people who have this affliction that I have, and that a guy like me can give that, meaning play without all the bells and whistles of chem and alcohol. Yeah, to be fully present for the play. So that I find that very important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's also I've mentioned this on previous episodes. When you're sober, you're normally here, and if someone's drunk or high, they're there.
Yes.
And it never really connects properly.
Yes. Well, and great disclosure or interjection is I have played and probably will play with people who are on drugs, but that's case by case, person by person. Yeah. And it's with my mood, where I'm at, who they are, you know, that's in general, I do not. It's my preference is no. Yeah. And there's certain circumstances like, you know, math and all that. It's definitely off the table. No.
Yeah. I have to be honest. on occasion, if I'm in a club and so on, I'm playing with someone, unless they're completely gone and they're not registering you, then I wouldn't play with them. But if they're having a good time and I'm having a good time, why not? As long as you keep yourself safe.
Agreed, 100%. Navigating that, that's what longevity with knowing who you are and what your own boundaries are is all it is. And just remove yourself immediately. Yeah.
You mentioned in your blurb that, of course, you became sober in '91, and you have connections to the kink and the sober queer scene in both LA and San Francisco. Yes. And you said you had some great mentors, but unfortunately, because of the... Let's jump into the deep end on that one. But you mentioned some of the mentors you had in your younger years. Is there any of them that stand out? Because you mentioned they're not around anymore because of the AIDS epidemic and so on.
My God. Yeah, all of them.
Tough question, sorry.
No, it's like, I told myself I did want to talk about this. This is one of the things I want to bring to this podcast for you and represent. And well, the medium-sized story, because that's all I got for this, is...
That's fine.
I come out in my early 19, and I've always known that I've had a fetish for shiny things. I used to play with plastic in the basement and make clothes. Wink, wink. And then of course, being in upstate New York when I was little, I wanted my snowsuit very tight. And I loved the leather gloves and tight. And, television was Batman and this show called The Wild Wild West. I forget the guy's name, but he'd wrestle and have chaps on and be tied up. And I was just like close to the TV as I could get. Hot. I mean, my mother literally would say, "Get away from the TV. You're going to ruin your eyes." It was hysterical. So fast forward, it's too long of a story. Parents divorced. I moved to San Francisco to live with an older gay brother. And this is what I would interject as well. It's kind of a second coming out. I came out as a gay man. And then I believe our fetishes, this is my story, my experience for me. I yet again had to turn around and go to my new gay friends. I like leather. I like rubber. I like to be tied up. I like to tie people up. I like asphyxiation. I like, ABC. And I was rejected. There was a lot of rejection. It's like, what? Translation, fear. They were young. I was young. So there comes in the portion of your question. I remember meeting this guy at work. I designed windows at the time at a giant department store. And he was big, muscly, and had a great chest and big nipples. And he came up to me, and we just started talking. So fast forward, he showed me the ropes. He said, "Meet me at Letitia's," which was this little leather hangout for the pregame before the beer bust at the Eagle. He's like, "Get yourself a pair of leather pants." So I did, and I showed up, and I was all of maybe 20, and they were so old. They were 35.
Oh my God, that's horrible.
Terrifying. Some were even in their 40s. Oh my God.
Ancient.
Holy shit. And they also had chaps on and no shirts. And I was like fascinated and terrified at the same time. Well, anyway, short version of that. What beautiful souls. I was taken in. Oh my God. I'm reflecting now. Like Gary Garcia, all these great guys. And here's some funny examples of what they would talk about. Flagging, top, bottom, colors. Right down to with the Eagle, if you stood by the restroom, there's this long trough, right? If you stood there with your arms crossed at a certain area, at the time, could mean that you were into water sports and that's what you wanted. Also, you could flag that, but yeah, it was just so fantastic. Taught me all of that. What else? Mind you, this is sober. I got sober really young. So I should say this too. I was able to enter my leather life and fetish life without having any history of that super high play. So I'm the lucky one. I really am. You know, I don't want to stay here long, but that was 85, and that's when AIDS hit in the major cities, and San Francisco was ground zero, one of them. And a little soundbite, maybe 15 of us would be at this place to have 40 margaritas before we went out, and then go, you know, hit the bars. 15, out of 15 of those guys, 10 were dead in the first year. It was horrific. I was like, where's Jerry? Where's Jerry? And it was usually couples. Entire couples would disappear. One would go, the other would go. It was, or they'd go home to once they came from Middle America. And so, and how that pertains to me, that shaped me and my sexuality with fetish. I actually didn't know at the time the importance of what I was being taught and shown by these men. I really didn't. You know, I was young and didn't give a shit. I do today. I cherish it. I have photos. Oh, it's so great. Yeah. I don't know. That's part of that answer. I could go on.
It's an interesting part of history, and I think
it really is.
For one of the reasons I wanted to just touch on it a little bit, I know it's a tough thing to talk about. It is because if we just get snippets of some of those stories out there on a podcast somewhere, that keeps them alive, and it's so important to show, especially my generation and younger, that there is a whole generation we've lost of educators, kinksters, and it's especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic and so on, all of a sudden this kind of resurfacing. It is. And with TV shows showing it really explicitly. You've had Pose, we had It's a Sin here in the UK, just with American Horror Story, which was beautifully done, even for a horror about a serial killer, but it was beautifully done. It's just so important to tell those stories, even if it's a small little anecdote about a person you knew in San Francisco that just show you the bars. Who was old and 35. How horrible.
Oh my God.
Oh,
you know, yeah. So sorry. Soundbite. I ended up in outside therapy, of course, you know, gratefully so. And one of the first sessions, not first, but issues he brought up was, how did you do with the epidemic? You're a young man, you're in your teens, and you witnessed that. And case in point, my best running partner died at 23. He was old. He was 23. I was like 19. I kind of pushed it down, and it's definitely post-traumatic stress stuff. So I don't want to stay here too long, but what's my point of bringing that up? I am that guy who was the young guy who kind of witnessed it, and I do need to talk about it. You're right. And he said that. Yeah. So I am.
It's a tough subject. I definitely have had hard conversations with other people last 2 years where they're in their 60s or 70s, and they're like really touched by some of these shows, and I've had to kind of be a soundboard. And do you know what? I'm happy to be a soundboard because I hear these stories. It's grueling to listen to, but it's so important that we share them. So
that's very kind of you, Rob.
I'm glad that you felt comfortable to at least share a little bit. I know it's difficult when you're on a live, and I'm putting you on the spot as well.
I'm good with it. For some reason, I don't really give a shit. I got to be honest.
Good.
The live spot. I don't know. I'm good with it.
Can I ask what happened?
Ask me.
What happened in '91 that made you want? Do you know what? I've had enough. Yeah. Stop drinking.
Sure. Well, as we know, the terminology is, the bottom. Mine was more of a spiritual malady, and simply put, believe me, there was consequences left and right. I was hit by a car while walking drunk in San Francisco, but to the essence of it, which I can describe like this, is I didn't like who I was becoming whatsoever. I was becoming this person and doing behaviors that were not ethically, morally, or spiritually in alignment with who I was as a man. And I knew it within. And that pull and that clash. And so what it looks like too is it gets complicated. I'm also an adult child. My dad of an alcoholic. My dad was alcoholic, and all my siblings. So there's a lot of baggage that goes with that. So I was very familiar with that road, and I saw it coming. So what really was the turning point was work, couple fronts. Work was, I was designing windows, and I was winning awards, and they loved me. But the big kahuna came up to me and said, you know, the main regional said, my God, you're so talented. We love you. We love what you put out, but you're super inconsistent. What is going on? Looking back, he was a gay man, big old leather bear. He knew. He told me later, he knew that I was alcoholic, that I had an issue. Fast forward, this really great friend of mine, a female who I loved, Kathy, I used to throw these giant parties, and I threw one of my notorious giant parties, and in the room were all these friends, supposedly, swinging from the, you know, the furniture. She sits next to me and said, who are these assholes? And I said, what? They're my friends. She says, no, they're not. They're assholes, and you're becoming one too, and left. Small thing, right? Mm. But not if it's someone you love, respect, and really want in your life. So those two things are, in brief, sent me to get help. So I did. Yeah.
So sometimes it's that smack in the face by someone that's really close to you, kind of going, you know what? You're becoming an asshole.
Absolutely.
I remember my best friend telling me, Ralph, you're starting to look like a junkie. That
truer the truth, truer the friend.
Yes.
Truer the truth, truer the friend.
It hurt at the time. Oh my God, because it's not the image I have of a head of a junkie, and I'm much more compassionate around those type of things nowadays because I've been on the other side of it.
Right.
But getting that sentence from your friend is hard.
Isn't it? You know, that tells me, when I hear that about you, that there was, I call it the pilot light of hope, was still lit. And I hate to say, being 31 years clean, I've seen the pilot lights go out left and right, and that's terrifying. I must keep that lit. So there's a whole pie chart, I always call it, of things that I do to keep me on the beam. Physical exercise, prayer meditation, alone time, self-care, whatever that looks like. Not necessarily isolation, but alone time, recharging, listening to what I need and want. These are things I never did before, and, you know, giving myself the best self daily, best I can. I don't always do it perfectly, believe you me, but yeah.
It's not perfection. It's not perfection. It's just one day at a time kind of thing.
Apparently, yeah, agreed.
So, when you started getting into kink, is there any like favorite stuff you really like? I know your Instagram is packed with amazing gear. Is there any like specific gear that you really get into?
Good question, Ralph. Yowza. First and foremost is leather, of course. Tight fitted, tailored, the old bluff, which is what you and I are, bluff, which when looking back, I think sexually I replicate that because I saw that in the bars and the hot guys, and I think that was the click for me. So I think in my mind, I replicate that. And the secondary is rubber, which, that's a funny little story. I think in 1992 was the first time I had ever went to London. I was like 20 something, and I went to this store called the Clone Zone. Is that still around?
Clone Zone still here? Still here?
No shit. In Earl's Court? Earl's Court?
No, this is now in Old Compton Street.
Okay. So picture me, there I am. I ditched this girl that I was with and my best friend, and they're like going to museums, and I'm like, fuck that, I'm going to go to a leather bar, the Colehearn?
Yeah, the Colehearn,
yes. Go there. And then there's no phones at the time, but I found out, and I predetermined where this little store was. I go in. I had never tried on rubber yet, and so I put a rubber shirt on in the dressing room, and you know the rest. Immediate, hot, turn on, hard on, yes, like, love. Bought it and took it home, and there you go. And at the time, Rob's of Amsterdam had opened a store in San Francisco, so I had access. It was great. So yeah, leather, rubber, PVC. And being a stylist, former fashion stylist,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to sound odd, but fitted, tight, really simple too turns me on. That's another conversation, but
No, no, no. Let's explore that. Let's talk shit.
Who said that? Oh God, really? What do you want to know?
Well, let's dive into it. It's like you're a stylist.
What?
You're a stylist, and there's certain styles
Yeah.
that really get you going. Is there any like
Well,
stuff you've worked with in the past that really is like this? I was really proud of that.
well, okay. Here's what I'm saying. I'm taking the joke out of it. If you and I were at the Eagle or whatever in London, what's a great bar in London? Let's go with that.
There isn't really any left.
No.
They're all
The
closed.
Hoist, gone. The Hoist,
Yeah.
gone.
Backstreet's gone.
Jesus. Okay. Well, we're standing in the old Hoist.
Yes.
Nothing. My joke has always been nothing is worse than a super hot guy, you know, or a hot guy, just a guy with ill-fitted, cheap, shitty. I'm gonna have to say it again. Ill-fitted leather, and what that is, and this is really what I'm saying is, we all have a mesomorph, ectomorph, whatever your body type is. Figure that out, and go for it, and turn that fetish up through what works on your body. That is, it's to access that, which I think I've done. I mean, myself, hopefully, and I promote that, and I love that. And so I had this conversation last night with a little cutie, little 20-something who's into rubber now. He was going off about all the stuff he ordered, and he's like, "You gotta help me. What socks?" And he wants to replicate the looks. Yeah. So that there's a crossover. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. It's okay. I see
Tell me that it does. Please, tell me it.
I feel like I've gotten to an age, I'm turning 39 in October, so I feel like I've gotten to an age where, yes, you started somewhere with your gear and so on, and I appreciate it's expensive. So if you're young, it's not necessarily always the best gear you get or the best fitting gear you get. You have to start somewhere. That's perfectly fine. But I also feel like I've gotten to an age where if I'm going to play with someone, I really need to be into them. And like you say, ill-fitting gear, it can be a bit, it looks clunky. It doesn't work with the body. You don't have to have the best body, but if you have gear that fits it well, perfect.
Yes. That's my point. In summary, it's about, for me, to describe fetish, for all of us, I agree, to a degree, it's all visual, isn't it? And the senses, the smell, and so for me, that component is huge. So, I mean, I find myself dressing people up before we play, and let's put this back. Worked out fine. For the most part.
It can be quite fun to dress someone up and just see the amount of times I'm on the underground and I spot a really good looking guy and I'm just like, if I put you in leather, you would be
right. Point taken. God.
So you've said you've done window. Is it window design or window decoration? What type of job is that, if I may ask?
Just in summary, it's visual merchandising and styling. You either do it on your own, and I ended up jumping around. You can do it for department stores like Saks, Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom. I did all that, and then you can jump into the designer part, which is what I did for 15 years, like Giorgio Armani, Gucci. So they fly you around to install their windows and merchandise their merchandise. So, I did that for years. And then I also had my own 2 little vintage clothing stores in the early 2000s in San Francisco. That was fun. I did have a little leather in there, but it's costly to sell that, and I couldn't really, but it was, so.
It's funny you mention that because it's almost a lost career on me. I used to be a sales assistant, and one of the classes you could take was window dressing. So I always was like, oh, my ears peak because I've learned all about writing in the window, how to set like AT settings and so on. So it's like almost a lost career that could have been. So it's quite cool.
It's wild. Famous artists have started there. Andy Warhol, Salvador Dali. I don't have them on the tip of my head, or tongue, but yeah, it's a segue into stage and set design as well, which I've utilized. And fundraising for clean and sober events when I was in my 20s and 30s in San Francisco. I did a lot of that for conventions and whatever was needed for fundraising. And yeah, it was fun. It was great. It was anything that you could do that was completely your own idea and bring it to the table is always fun, right? Yeah.
So what did you contribute to like the fundraising around with the sober communities, with the set design and so on? How did that look for you?
How did that look?
Yeah, what did you do? It's like I'm curious to see what that entailed.
Sure. So within a conference, which means each city has a conference, a weekend where there's specific workshops. It's within a 4-day period, let's say, or 3-day period, and they have entertainment to keep the people happy and make funds for the next years. Mm-hmm. So they have plays that are reworked to tell a sober story usually. So it's all completely volunteer, believe you me. There's not enough of them, but for years I did the sets. Like it would be Pinocchio gets sober. Or Auntie Mame. Yeah, it was a hoot. Over the top and then a little bit more.
It's the thing about looking at yourself and having a laugh as well.
Oh my God, and hopefully you're getting that from me. That's very important.
I don't take myself very serious, and when it comes to like if people ask about my sober journey, I will make a joke out of it. Because it's dark shit, and I do on occasion get on my soapbox and I do get serious when I talk about stuff. Sure. But I'm also like, yeah, I used to do crazy shit like saving my own pee because it was laced with my drug taking. Yeah. So it seemed very normal to me to offer that to people when they come to work. But now looking back, they must have thought I was nuts.
Well, you were, honey.
Yeah.
With the lightest of heart, I say that, and I was as well.
So, becoming sober in '91 and navigating the kink scene as a sober man, how's that been, and how have you seen the scene change, especially around dating apps and the access to? Like you're not a part of the whole chemsex thing, so how has that been as someone as a sober person looking in and seeing that happening?
Well, to jump to the end and then I'll go back. How's that been to witness, basically?
Yeah,
painfully, unfortunately, horrific. And here's a snapshot of what I would say, and I'm going to make it up, but I live here in West Hollywood. So this is an industry town. There's so much beauty. You throw a stone, there's somebody beautiful, and you throw another stone, there's somebody more beautiful. It's insane. They come here to be working actors and in the industry. So with that said, this town eats people up. They move here from Nebraska, this gorgeous 6'4" guy who has it all, health and family and kindness, and gets swallowed up into the world of chem or meth specifically. And you witness this decline, and this is like what I'm referring to now too is since my San Francisco days when it was pretty in the 90s. It was horrific. It still is. So you'd see these beautiful men just lose their health, which is really the wealth that we have, isn't it? And their sanity in some cases. Yeah. So say the question again. So you asked me, how was it
kind of to observe, because
to navigate
the change kind of happened in 2008 with the apps and the access, and all of a sudden this just kind of exploded, and it did in the States, it did over here. How was it like as someone sober kind of having to navigate it but also witness it?
So that's a great, I actually thought about that because I thought about what am I going to say today, and one of them was this topic of that transition from standing in a bar hoping that you get cruised by the guy you want to cruise you, or you doing the same, right? It went from that to proximity, there they are 100 feet away, was a huge thing to have happen. So to start at the beginning, I am the last of the Mohicans where none of that existed in the late 80s and early 90s, or just hit. for example, this bar called the Loading Dock in San Francisco, amazing. It was modeled after a Berlin bar, or a dark bar in Berlin, I was told. Very long and narrow, with a crow's nest up above for reading the Bible. Wink, wink. Yeah. And so you select your Bible member downstairs, go upstairs and read your chapter. It was really fun. And so, and I love to tell this story too. So in that bar, one of my first experiences was, this super hot, beautiful, beautiful, big bodybuilder dude was standing there, you know, arms crossed, full leather. I would have chewed on his foot, if he took, whatever he wanted me to do. So I stood next to him. I thought, fuck, go for it, honey. So I did. He turns to my left and he goes, hey. And I go, hey. And then the boring question, what do you do? I asked him that for whatever fucking reason. And he shook his head. It took him literally probably 40 seconds. Like, am I going to tell the truth? And he goes, I'm a hairdresser. And then I said, well, I'm a window designer. So I say that too, because here we are, these masculine portrayed dudes in this moment at the bar. I love that too. It's like, I do. You know, he did hair in LA. He was visiting and I did fashion windows. My point there is that diminished when it became online, you know, with Recon, Grinder, only Manhunt. What was the beginning? What helped me out here? What was the, the initial ones?
Well, over here is Gaydar.
Oh, right, Gaydar.
Online stuff. And then, of course,
Right.
we moved to Recon, and Recon got their own app. And then, of course,
Right.
Grindr, Rough.
Right. Right.
And then there's been a couple of others that kind of just fell away over the years. But yeah.
I'm good with it. I'm glad that I got to see the world without the television, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And no, what's the metaphor? I got to see the television before color, and I appreciate it. But I also see there's a kind of a funny torture. You see this fantastic match, and you're chatting, and you're like, holy shit, and it's on, and he lives in Switzerland. You know, you're like, Jesus. I mean, there's magic to that. There's also torture, right?
Well, you can look at Instagram, for example.
Yeah.
If we didn't have that, I wouldn't have connected with you. We wouldn't have had this conversation.
I wanted to say the same thing to you. I did. Let's talk about that, if I may. Wow, the magic of Instagram. This page I started during COVID. You know, I think that's how you found me. Is that how you found me? I forget.
Yes, you popped up on my feed as a suggestion. You might like his content. Then I scrolled through your content. I was like, yes, I do.
Very kind of you, Ralph.
Yeah.
That's a great little story. I think you appreciate that, and whoever's watching this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
So COVID, lockdown here in LA, either lay in the roof in the sun or lay in the driveway, and then, or, you know, work out in the living room or eat. And then it became boring. So I literally was sitting in my sofa, and I had these giant gray shades. I thought, okay, pulled them off the wall and began taking photos of myself in fetish gear. Because I had no place to go, and I wanted to get in it. And holy shit, it was like a ticker tape. Because those photos, for me, on that Instagram, is a fashion window. It's just cropped and edited in the fashion and the styling. And it's kind of what I want to see. You know, it's easy to do, and I hope this doesn't sound odd, but it's easy to do crotch grabbing, ass showing, over the top. We've all seen, you can go to Twitter for that in a hot minute.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah. So it's basically, I'm trying to do fetish editorial, if that makes sense. And that's
there's definitely several accounts where it's more fetish / artsy and actually more high class photos instead of just here's my bulge, which is fine.
Trashy.
That's fine, but go to Twitter for that. That's fine.
For sure. I'm a customer of that. Are you kidding? I'm glad for the bulges. But I guess truly I'm making light of it, but that is in, you know, being in the design world, I've heard it hundreds of times. Designers put out there and create, which I am, what doesn't exist. I thought, okay, what am I not seeing? And I thought, it's just provocative, sexy, and in what's the word? implied, left and right, leaving you to go, huh? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I was already on TikTok during lockdown, but what I jumped into in lockdown, and I'm too old for it, but I jumped into
Yes.
TikTok.
I saw yours. They're cute. They're good.
Yeah, and you know what?
You're very cute.
They're a little suggestive. I haven't
They're
had any
good.
trouble on there.
Yeah.
There's a couple of homophobes that come up on my feed or something like that and made a comment or something. But
Oh,
in
that's
generally,
awesome.
most people have been nice, and it's just a bit of fun. And
Exactly.
and if
Exactly.
people don't like what I put out, then just block me and move on.
100% agree. Yeah. So
But
yeah, that transition was huge, and I am not the guy who's on the apps daily, and it's just, I don't know. Gratefully so. So, I think, what else?
Instagram can be fun, absolutely, and you put out a lot of things and so on. I'm quite careful. As recovering addicts, I definitely have a phone addiction.
Sure.
So I'm sure I'm going to get arthritis in my thumb at some point.
Yeah.
So I do find Instagram is a bit of a two-edged sword. I enjoy it, but
Yes.
as someone with I'm not going to beat around the bush. I do have body dysmorphia, and I kind of look myself in the mirror, and that's not what people see my body as. Is not what I see.
Yes.
So sometimes Instagram can be quite hard to look at as well, because everyone
Yeah.
is so beautiful and it's all edited.
Agreed. Yes. Well, to go touch on that, I too myself have it as well. Most gay men do. Yeah, it's that visual, immediate judgment. But I'd like to say, and this is my own personal story, my own personal work that I've done on myself, that may be my first inkling or thought, but I look right as quick as I can behind that. Who is this person? What are they like? Are they nice? And that diminishes that critical mind of others, and then I get to be inclusive. For me, that's the height of emotional maturity. And so, yeah, when I meet anybody in any situation for play or all of that, primary, of course, is the visual, like, but secondary, really, who are they? You know, I'm doing that now. There's probably people watching this that perceive me one way, and they're seeing, this is Miles, this is who I am. And, you know,
yeah, we talked about that earlier in the week about coming on to the live, and you had your trepidations about it.
I did.
Because all of a sudden you're going from having your Instagram face.
Does nothing.
Well, it's you do amazing pictures and are very, very sexy, but it doesn't really tell about you as a person. So this is much more personal.
It is, and you're right. And I kept it that way. And it was very intentional for many reasons. But yeah, I do have a partner for almost 5 years. Talked to him. He's primarily vanilla, and he just said, "Oh, let him know who you are in brief." You know, it's a form of intimacy, and also the forum that you're providing. I do, as you know, I'm sure you're the same guy. If this helps literally one person go, "Hey, that dude, he can get crazy in the sack, and still, you know, not use or drink." Wow. Inspirational, right?
I posted on my stories just before I came onto the live. A friend of mine, a former guest on the podcast, has just been to laboratory last night. Was a downright pig, and it was his first time doing it sober, and he was really, really proud of himself. And it's just that simple action of actually being in those environments we used to be in, either high or drunk, and all of a sudden having to do it sober. For example, this weekend is Antwerp Leather Pride weekend. Unfortunately, I couldn't afford to go, but I went in 2019, and that was my first big sober event, and I had a blast.
I bet you did. You know, yeah. I'd like to, I think, who is it, embarrassing enough? Oprah said something like, well, I don't know if it's Oprah, but, you know, if you've done the work, or meaning looked at yourself and our stuff and how we show up, and we try to do that differently, we get to be our true self. And what a beautiful gift. And people respond to that. My God, you're like, I will with you. When I watch your podcast, you're so clear-headed, straightforward, and it's super charming, and you represent the leather community really well. I love that. So I'd like to
Thank
be
you.
that guy too.
You're
Yeah.
gonna make me blush. You're gonna make me blush.
Are you blushing?
But then
I
again,
can't see.
then it's all about what I present here is not necessarily what goes on outside this.
Yes.
I've talked about it before. I do suffer a little bit with my mental health and so on. So
Uh-huh.
I do have normal anxieties and stuff like that.
Sure.
And a lot of people's like, oh, it doesn't come across on the podcast. Yeah, but I'm on. I have to be on with
Yes.
my guests. I
Yes.
can't fall to pieces whilst I'm doing this.
Well, that's the beauty, isn't it? You get to not have it dominate and rule your life, those fears and anxieties and issues of anything. It's, how's it go? The absence of fear, that's not going to happen. You just have to take the fear, put it in the backpack, and here we go. Right size it and continue. That's true courage, isn't it? Having the fear. It's not when everything's fine and copacetic and easy and going right that we're the strong. Ooh, I can do it. It's when it's shitty, difficult, and you go forth anyway. There's the magic of being, you know, I don't know. There's a great poem. What's this? Actually, it's from your country. About being in the arena. My God. Hold on. It was during the war. Who was the prime minister during like the 1940s?
Churchill.
Winston Churchill. And has this magical poem he wrote about that. It's not the man who observes, it's the man who's in the arena with blood, sweat, and tears, or something like that. Participating, showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I try to think about that. Yeah.
I think it's about it's not about perfection, and
No.
you're gonna have shitty days no matter what, and that you're gonna have shitty nights going out in fetish gear and you're not feeling it, and that's fine. That happens, and it's not. It's a temporary thing. That's the thing.
Agreed. It's to remember that though. In the moment, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna feel like this forever. You know, the loss of job, breakup, whatever it is, or you know, yeah.
So I'm curious because you mentioned that working out is very important to you. How long have you been? Are you bodybuilding, or are you just a big guy? How long have you been bodybuilding?
Look, thank you. Good question. I love that too. So part of that sobriety, makeup, and serenity, and is physical exercise. It's for me. It's such a gift. Like I used to be a runner in my 20s, so I'm the lucky guy in that way too. When I've always been athletic. I ran track and field, anything that's non-contact, because, you know, being a big gay boy in a small town in upstate New York, you know, God forbid I touch somebody, you know, you know, and get a heart on. Let's see. When I got sober, I met this guy. This is the comedy behind it, who was a big drug addict, but he was a personal trainer, and we became fast friends. He was a sweetheart. He's from Utah. And he trained me when I was like 21, and I caught on and just loved the high. So I went from the high of, using to that. And initially it was cardio. And then it's morphed into bodybuilding, weights. There's a feeling, there's a different kind of exhaustion that my body gets. And of course the aesthetic, why not? Good interjection. And that's when, I did want to mention this too, so I'll just roll into it. Mm-hmm. In San Francisco, it's such a kumbaya, be yourself, liberal city. It's known for that. Does that ring a bell for you?
Yeah. It very much has like a small town feel when you're there.
It does. So even
such a friendly city.
And even back in the day, it was even smaller. My God, to be there in the 50s or the 60s would have been Shangri-La. I can only imagine. But the 80s was with the big incline of all the tech, so it was still small, but it was coming, not like today. So with that said, so I had done my fair share of drag, hag actually. I can't apply makeup. I'm not. You should see the photos; they're horrific. So I embraced that quick because it's fun. I'm a fun, lighthearted guy. Hopefully, you're getting that point today. Just fun. I mean, throwing a pair of roller skates back in the day and some crappy wig and some shitty makeup, and out the door I went. I'm not kidding. So when it came to fetish, wearing chaps and leather, this is the honest to God truth. And I'm glad I'm talking about this because I wanted to. Let me slow down. To embrace Miles's full masculinity was really even more challenging and more scary and more unknown than the feminine. I had stuffed that because for me, my experience was growing up in a small town in upstate New York. I couldn't really be me. I didn't know who that was. My truth is, I'm kind of a masculine guy, but I stuffed who I was. Many people stuff if they're more effeminate. So the short version of that, so I had to help that blossom and grow that. And it was a challenge. And that was the early sobriety days, was finding my masculine self and embracing it. Truly. Sounds wacky, but
No, it's you know what, I think a lot of, especially around fetish, I've now realized that, especially around like the leather scene, you can run into Leathermen who don't describe to, you're not allowed to smile, you have to look constipated the whole time, you're not allowed to be the slightly feminine or anything, and
ridiculous.
it's all of a sudden, it's like, oh, there is a bit of toxic masculinity, there's a lot of toxic masculinity on the fetish scene, where I've been on the receiving end of that, where someone's written me in the past kind of going, oh, you look really great in your gear over the weekend, but I wouldn't approach you, you're too feminine. Which translate to, I speak with my hands a lot and I'm smiling and so on, but that's not what a blunt guy should look like. But it's about finding that balance between the light and the dark and the feminine and the masculine, and you mentioning drag, and or what did you call it instead?
Ag.
So
which implies terrible makeup and bad hair.
5-minute drag, like they say on
Drag Race.
It's nice to meet another guy who don't takes himself so serious that he can't put on a wig and a pair of rollerblades and just roll out in a dress.
You bet your ass. Because let's face it, the controversy going on now in this country, drags, you heard about that with drag.
Yes.
Well, isn't this really is drag? All of it is. I mean, anything we put on our body is what we want to say to the world, who we want to, this is my belief, what we want to interact with. My God, I made a living at that. A certain designer, Giorgio Armani, would say, wear this, this, and this, and you're okay. Well, it attracts a certain type of person or a certain thought process, and so does this. And I like that. Yeah. Definitely animal in the forest attracting each other.
It's
primary.
It is interesting to see what goes on in the States, and it's starting to happen over here as well.
Is it?
With drag, and there's also been, in the later years, there's been a little bit of pushback on, is kink allowed at Pride? It's a family event. It's like,
really?
No. The Leathermen and the leather lesbians and so on, they were on the front line. So do not try to erase them from Pride. And I think a lot of people, even inside the community, we forget a little bit, like, Pride was a protest, not we're lucky to have it as a celebration now. We are very lucky, but we also now see quite a big pushback, especially with drag and the trans community, which is scary.
It is. I'd like to think that, being a man of a certain age, that everybody before, we've helped, we've pushed it, and they're going to push it further. And the flag, I hand it to them. There's plenty of young people who are doing the right thing. But agreed. Tough stuff.
Well, we have to support it because leather is also drag. We have to.
It is.
And it, like you mentioned earlier in the conversation, where you mentioned you had this conversation with who was a hairstylist and you're a window dresser or a designer, and it's just the amount of times I've walked into Backstreet or the Hoist where I can hear two Leathermen talk about the latest recipe they just tried for their new book.
Exactly.
Or the latest porcelain plate they just bought for their collection, and it's that contrast that's funny to me, and I enjoy that.
Let me be clear with you. I'm saying that's wonderful. You are as well. Yes. And it's role play. It's also, sure, I can snap right into verbal dominant top if I need to. My version of it, your version. You can do the same or sub. that's the fantasy and the beauty. And I'll mention this too. I feel, for lack of a better term, blessed that I have this fetish. You know, purely vanilla. God bless them, but ooh la la, what to do with that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, my brain does boggle.
Yes, mine too.
It's when I talk to people, I do sometimes on occasion people will question my credibility as a sir, but then they haven't been at the receiving end of my writing.
Exactly. They haven't been at your table.
No, they haven't. And do you know what I do in the bedroom and my aesthetic and my personality changes very much from when I'm not in that role.
And isn't that the blast? That's fantastic. That's another. What time is it? Oh gosh. Oh,
we
it's almost
have
done, eh?
we have approximately 7 minutes left.
So yeah. With that said, yeah, I actually you just covered it. There's when someone won't leave that role of the sir, and it's. I encountered this. I just went to an event at the Tom of Finland house here in LA. It was his last home, I guess, up in Silver Lake.
Yeah.
There was a fundraiser. It was a really great group of guys, probably 50 guys, which in this town is huge. And maybe 30 guys. So we're all in our bluff gear, and I'm trying to put it together. So I saw, you know, the faces are familiar because we know each other from online, majority of them. But there's this one guy from, I won't say the city because he can be very put together very quickly, who was an absolute, utter, top, dumb idiot, boundaryless,
Yeah.
pawing at me, just letting me say hello, just started touching my, you know, didn't go so well. So I cut that quickly and moved on, or else it would have been kind of a little brawl. What is my point? Oh, my guess is, I think that's what he thinks he needs to do at such an event, to prevent this Tom of Finland persona. It's like, ouch, no, there's hors d'oeuvres over there. And, you know, what do you do for a living? Sell insurance? Yeah.
So the fetish scene in LA, I'm assuming, is,
Yes.
or in WeHo, is not that extensive.
Zero. No.
It's zero.
Well, that's another thing we could talk about too. San Francisco and London are cities with public transportation, and you intermingle, and so you get to see each other and encounter each other, and it's a walking city for the most part. LA is not at all. You're in your car, you can meet someone who's from Orange County, which is only an hour away, but to get there, because of traffic, is 3 to 4 hours. 3 hours.
Jesus.
It's ridiculous. So with that said, yeah, West Hollywood itself, there's probably 15 of us. That's putting it. So it's Silver Lake, which is the east side, which is predominantly where the bar, well, there's one bar left, that what is it? The Eagle. Sorry, I've had this worst chest cold. So they congregate over there, and kind of majority of them live over there. But all in all, we're so spread out. The Los Angeles County is huge, and yeah, it's an issue. Yeah. But upcoming is Leather Pride Week, and there's fantastic events. Palm Springs has a great Pride Week. It's phenomenal. Then, of course, IML in Chicago, which I'm trying to go to. I'd love to. I haven't been to that for so long. That's fantastic.
I haven't been since 2017, and it was a druggy affair of 4 days of no sleep. So it's a space I want to reclaim.
You would bring a lot to the table. You should. That's another thing too. Bring your gear and your sober self. Wow, that's a gift. Yeah.
It's one of the things where one of the reasons I started all this, like the podcast was because of lockdown. The sober fetish group on Facebook I started mainly because I needed an entrance back into fetish life, but also Europe, we don't really have anything when it comes to catering to sober fetish people. No, we don't.
Well, see, that was to my point about my photos and that is really a creative person. So count yourself in. If you don't see it or find it, you yourself have created it and bringing it to the world. Is there a better gift? I think not. And you know, would someone critique it and do it different? A, B, and C? Sure. Well, fuck you. You're not doing it. I am. It's like, you know. And so with that said, I want to plug this. I'm starting a fetish line based on my success of my Instagram page. Within the next 60 days would be the outside.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Started with like simple 6-7 items, and because the feedback has been, where'd you get that? Where'd you get that? And 60% of what I'm showing on there, I have designed and had made and custom. And I thought, well, what the hell? It's time.
Yeah, fantastic.
At a great price. Yeah.
I am looking forward to seeing some more of that. To end the episode, we are coming to the end of the time.
Great.
It's been absolutely lovely to have you on. Is there any advice you would give to someone out there who is either starting on their fetish journey or on their sober journey?
On either or, eh?
Yeah.
There's such
Or a mix.
two different
Or a mix.
Yeah, I guess I'll answer it through the mix. Well, no. I'll answer a little bit of each. Sober journey. Again, I can only speak from my inner voice at the time. Stop digging. You know, the bottom can be where you're at. And just ask for help. That was my issue. To become vulnerable is really all it is. Extend your hand to someone. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Just start there. As far as fetish, I'm going to answer that question in regards to once you do get sober and you think that you can't play sober, you can. It's actually higher than high. You're present for it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And if people want to contact you, can they contact you through Instagram?
Yes, Instagram only, because God help me. That's a lot.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming on. It's been a joy to chat with you.
Oh, vice versa, Ralph. What a pleasure and an honor to be asked anything like this. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic.
All right.
Hopefully I'll see you in real life at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Fantastic. Have a good day.
You too, handsome man.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
So that was Miles from LA, WeHo, and it was absolute joy to have on. I'll be back next week for our final episode of the season, and next week we're going to Ireland to talk to a really, really good friend of mine. So have a great weekend. If you're in Antwerp, have a great weekend. Be safe, be sober, and be kinky.